just those who probably pay a higher membership fee is
Correct.
part of the
They would-
business plan. So it's not necessarily the law enforcement that you're talking about.
Yes, so the law enforcement will have their own access to it.
So how are you going to verify how many people are coming and going? So say you have 50 people that are in VIP and they all come at once. Clearly, they can't get access to a gun range at that time because you're going to have multiple people coming through there. So how is that going to be handled?
So the VIP section will be handled by scheduling, especially if you're after hours. I mean, you don't want 50 people just sitting around the VIP lounge
Right.
waiting. I wouldn't want to be waiting around. So there would be a system in place to make sure that people actually sign up for a lane. Or they can at least know that a lane will be available to them when they show
Okay.
up.
And how many days a week for normal public are you planning to operate?
This will be open 7 days a week.
I wanted to ask a couple quick questions. First of all, thank you for your service with the Coast Guard. On the diagram here where it says quiet range, is that where the parking will initially start for the facility?
So what you see here, the quiet range, the VIP lounge, and 100-yard bay, those are all underneath
Okay.
the retail section.
So the parking is extended close as you're moving towards City Hall then?
No,
Is
so
it-
the parking actually starts, let me see. I don't have a laser here, do I? No. So the parking would actually be right outside the front door. We want to leave the south side, the south wing of the building open for the phase 2 of the project so that we can potentially expand and have that available. You can see there where I put some vehicles, not tall enough, but some vehicles up there that will show the parking area will be at.
How many parking spots do you anticipate having?
I don't have the answer to that question, but it would have to be something that would allow the patrons to come in and have enough space so that they're not parking in City Hall Avenue. And going on that, the reason why we put a back door is so that it's easier for the police officer to just walk over and access our building, and they can just walk instead of having to go around. But that door does not have to be there at all if the city thinks it's going to be an issue as far as people walking around. You won't see, I mean, if people go to the range, they'll take a case, and you might see them walking with a case, but you shouldn't see people walking around with guns in their hands. That's not normal.
So back to the security.
Yes.
So you're not going to have anybody on site.
There will be security on site. There
will be.
There has to be one employee present to
Okay.
manage the building.
And is there going to be an age requirement to be unsupervised, so for minors?
So that is set by Virginia state law.
Okay.
What they're set as far as age requirements for firearm ownership and handling. There should be no reason somebody less than 21 years old should be handling a pistol down there unless they're with their father or guardian.
Okay.
Going again, other kids as well. So, but as far as attending the range, there really isn't a minimum age requirement. If you're with your parent, you know, we will have youth classes and youth
Sure.
days for them to come and visit.
Did I understand you correctly that you said there would be someone on site 24/7, 7 days a week?
If we have the range open, there has to be an employee on site, and that's going to be an insurance requirement.
Even for VIP access and
Yes.
police access?
Yes.
Okay.
I do want to note, if I may, Madam Chair, a lot of the discussion, some of the discussion, has been about law enforcement access and use. It's important, but I just want to note for, you and the folks at home listening to the folks here, this is not this application is not being made in partnership with the city. There's no corporate sponsorship or anything contracted between our department and the applicant. It's something that he is making available. It's just important to note, and for those at home.
Okay. Would you like to say anything else that you think would be pertinent, Mr. Rollins?
Yeah, I would like to thank Mr. Canella and Mr. Horton. This is a project we've been working on for a few years, and we met more than a few times to try to get to this point. So, again, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Anyone else wish to come up and speak? All right, okay, come on up. Give us your name, as if I don't know it.
Benji Hahn, 2 Ashland Farm Lane, the coast. I'll use an old trite saying that you've all heard, haste makes waste. The applicant said we've been working on this for several years, and I came in tonight and Thomas was kind enough to provide me with the application last week, and I saw this 100-yard stretch, and I said, what is that, a sidewalk? And it's a underground firing range, and we just hear about it tonight. Thomas says, we don't know, we can't project traffic because we don't exactly know what's going to be in there, what's that going to be there. So we can't really predict the traffic impact. With regard to the underground shooting range, someone asked about the water table. All you need to do is look at the drainage ditch when you come into town. It's always full of water, and what is it, 4 foot below grade? So I can't imagine, I'm no engineer, but that you would be able to dig down enough to have 6 foot, 8 foot of coverage in the ground without running into the water table. And I think if I heard the applicant correct, he said, well, we're going to have to put stone in and we'll have to mound it up. I'm not sure that's going to fit in with the big woods. I mean, we've all thought that the big woods was going to be the project for the city. We've been talking about it for 40 or 50 years. And there are just too many unknowns tonight for you to approve this. So I would ask you to be cautious. The one thing that troubles me, I mean, the applicant's supposed to take care of traffic and all the conditions, and he proposes, I guess the city asked for a 20-foot easement for Alpha Street extended. It has always been the city's hope that Alpha Street would tie into City Hall Avenue. You can see, and I'd forgotten this, but in your package it shows the old Williana Road is recorded in deed book 56, 55, and it's been 30 years since I've done a title, but if my memory is correct, the last deed book I looked at was in the 500s. So that tells you how old that was recorded. When Langley Federal Credit Union was developed and when the Food Lion Shopping Center was developed, a lot of time and effort went into ensuring that there would be a 50-foot right-of-way. We had alignment issues and everything. And as I see it, as Commissioner Green said, the applicant wants to basically use the whole site and give a 20-foot easement along for, I'll use the Williana Road, because that's what I'd like to see it called, rather than Alpha Street extended. Well, as council will tell you, an easement doesn't do any good For it to be a public road, it's got to be pretty simple. I mean, a 20-foot easement's nothing. So I think, but putting aside the questions of whether this is the appropriate use with the sound, noise, traffic, everything, it's just, you don't have enough details to act upon it, in my opinion. I would urge you to be cautious. And I know that the 13th condition says that City Council reserves the right to amend any conditions if it deems it necessary. And I can assure you, while that sounds good on paper, it doesn't work very well in reality, because it's unfair to the applicant. It's unfair, you know, and you say, well, if that's a problem, why didn't you tell me up front it was a problem? Why now, all of a sudden, you're changing the rules of the game? So I would urge you to, let's have some more detail and make sure we get it right before this is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Councilmember. My name is Bill Buthick. I live off of 156 Smith. I'm a retired Navy Chief Petty Officer. I moved here in December 2014. So I've been here just shy of 10 years. I appreciate the comment from the previous person, about details, and I'm sure that the applicant will get those details ironed out. But I would only suggest that, we're building a huge storage area right off the Wood Creek that the person brought, and it's going to be a big old building. And it's really going to bring money, right? And I think that's what the applicant's going to be able to do, is generate revenue, which is good for the city. Also, he's going to help increase firearms awareness. I think too many kids nowadays get behind a controller or PS5, and that's part of the problem. I think firearms training is very important. I grew up in Wisconsin, and I hunted with my dad for almost 6 years before I was able to pick up my first gun. I went to the range with him, and I learned how to shoot, learned how to break down the gun, clean the gun, take care of it. I learned what it could do. And I think that's very important. Having something like that here is going to help the people here, because I know you've all walked out on July the 4th and on New Year's Eve night, and you've heard people shooting off their guns. Oh, that's firecrackers. No, I've been around enough guns, 24 years in the Navy. I know what a weapon sounds like. It's not firecrackers. It's people doing stupid things just because they're not paying attention. I think something like this would certainly help increase awareness and give people some place to go to train and learn the right way to handle weapons. And I think it's, my last one, I think it's funny because your plan from 2018 to 2030 talks about sidewalks for here, but not for the rest of the town. And I'll leave that there.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Come right up.
My name is Steve Bolte, 23 Canal Drive, Poquoson. I've been here about 12 years, and, as a father of some young children, having somewhere that I can take them to teach them how to safely handle firearms so that there aren't accidents in the home. I keep all my firearms double locked. I got trigger locks on them, and they're in a vault at home. So personally, I feel like I have that covered, but, it gives an opportunity to teach them, to take classes. I think about all of the retired military that are in our area, which I'm not, but think about all those people who have grown up around guns, have shot them, enjoyed them, giving them an opportunity to have somewhere close to home that they can go shoot and teach their kids. And I like the idea of having the safety classes as well. I know my wife could stand to improve her gun safety knowledge, so that's something that we would look at doing. I think it's a great thing for Poquoson. I've been at other indoor ranges where you virtually cannot hear gunshots going off when you walk up to them. And I think the one that I'm thinking of was a purpose-built range facility. So I don't have much of a concern about the noise. I don't think it'll impact. I am an engineer, but not a civil engineer. you know, to me, the underground range, I agree with the water tables, but I would assume there is engineering methodology to do that construction in such a way, because I'm sure he does not want a range filled with water. So, anyways, I think it's a great thing for the city, and I'd love to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Albert White, and my family has some property up here adjoining here. I can't rave about having a gun range.
Pull that mic a little bit towards you.
I can't rave about having a gun range. We advertise Poquoson as the place. I see the sign. Is this the place we want it to be? I mean, there are places in the city that you could probably have a gun range, but this is going to be the midpoint of the city. And I don't know how many people will be over here in the Legacy and the other developments that appear to be ongoing. But I don't know how you would control it, but people who want to pack a gun and walk around with a gun, they're going to be coming downtown, if this is downtown. And kids are going to be coming. I mean, even though there may be fences and walls, they're going to go wherever they want to go. And I just don't think it's a good fit for this part of the city. And secondly, is there another part of the city more fitting to have this type of facility? It's going to cost a lot to build it. The people are going to come. They're going to have to pay. I don't know what the city does now with its police officers, but if they want to practice shooting, they go somewhere. They don't go around the neighborhood. And I reckon the city reimburses them as they would this development to make sure their police officers are trained. So I'm not a pro-gun person. You can have your guns, but I don't know if they need to be in the middle of the city. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, certainly.
So out of the conversation, we were talking earlier, I never said why we wanted to build this. I grew up in the country, back home, and we had a lot of empty space. My grandfather taught me how to shoot. I'm sure all of you grew up in Poquoson. Back in the day, you can go out to the marsh and you can go shoot anywhere you want. Plenty of open space. Unfortunately, we don't have that anymore here in Poquoson. Little by little, the space that we had for outdoor recreation is getting developed. So where are we going to teach our kids how to shoot? Where are we going to teach our kids firearm safety? Where are we going to go hunting? These places are dwindling little by little in the city. And that's why we're building this. Like you said, Poquoson is the place. Poquoson is a Second Amendment sanctuary city. And I guarantee you that every firearm owner in Poquoson they're law-abiding citizens. You know, we barely have any crime here in the city. We're very fortunate to live where we live. And going on the law enforcement aspect of it, based on my background, if you have a law enforcement officer practicing training in that range, they could be doing live fire training, or they could be doing judgmental use of force, which is with a simulator, and you have a call. They can be in that call in less than 5 minutes. They're already in town. Now, if that officer is over in Yorktown at the outdoor range, or in Hampton somewhere in the range, now you have one less officer, maybe 5 less officers, because they were having a training event. That's going to take them at least 15 minutes to get to that call. So on the law enforcement side, that's the capability that having a place like this would offer for them. And again, I just wanted to clear out the motive why we wanted to build this range here in Poquoson. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that everybody now? Okay, I'm not going to close.
Madam Chairwoman,
Oh,
may I ask a question of Thomas, please?
sure, but I was going to say if everybody has spoken, I'm not going to close the public hearing because of the fact that I don't know what's going to be transpire here as far as whether we're going to take a vote on this tonight. So I'm going to leave that open. So certainly, Planning Commission can go forward here.
I know, for example, when we've looked at other CUPs, there's been a requirement to notify neighbors via letters, and this is what's going on in has that been done in this case with the residents?
Yes, that's been done.
So each household has received a mailing?
Two of the adjacents are present, being Mr. Hahn and Mr. White.
Okay, I'm going to kind of step in and say that I think this is an interesting project, which I think certainly has a number of positives. I see more and more people, just as you said, do not have a place where they can shoot. It used to be I lived on 22 acres. I could go out, my father could go out, shoot if he wanted to. We don't have that anymore because of the close proximity of homes and for safety reasons. And a lot of places do have ranges, and it is important to be able to teach children the proper way of handling a firearm. And teaching anybody, myself included. I took it over at Newport News, a class from a police officer, but I had to leave town to do it. I do think that in light of some of the things that have been presented as of today, in fairness to you, I would kind of like to see us mull this over a little bit more, because there are some new elements that have come into play. And in fairness to you, I would like to see these incorporated into what is presented if we decide to table it again, because it may be in your favor to do so. It may clear up some things that we may have some concerns about. I don't know. That's my feeling on it. I just think it would be a good idea. I agree that we should maybe just not rush into it immediately. I'm kind of, I think it's a good idea, but there are some questions in my mind that I'd kind of like to see us. I'd like to see us table it. Now that's my opinion. I don't know for what it's worth. The rest of the planning commission has to say as much as I do, so have at it.
I'm in agreement that I think a few more details would be beneficial. There's a couple of things I'd like to see more details surrounding. One is we've talked about the sound levels, and I know there's been some data presented today, I think, right, on some of the comparative sound levels, which seem maybe potentially higher than the ambient sound levels. Some of these were presented in industrial districts. Obviously, this isn't industrial, this is village commercial, and so there might be a lower threshold. And I think there should be a reasonable threshold, but it may not be 65 decibels or whatever's in here. So I think that needs to be explored, and those questions need to be answered about what is the acceptable limit, and then just to ensure that that's going to be able to be met. And I don't know what that is. I think we need to do more exploration on that and perhaps do a study or on the ambient noise level now and what the limit should be. Obviously, as we've said, it can't be zero. There needs to be some reasonable limit. I'd also like to better understand the traffic implications. I think some of the questions asked about that tonight, even to the applicant, were unclear, and I'd just like to see a little more detail and guidance about what is expected, just to ensure that we're not going to create a traffic issue.
I'd be curious too to see a little bit more of the elevation. I like the idea. well and what that does to your first floor and, how.
And I would echo that as well. I'm, a little concerned with how that long range with sea levels, and then you're going to build it up some, and how it's going to look in keeping with the characteristics of buildings next to it. I'd like to see a little bit more detail regarding that. Elevation, certainly, and traffic, a more concrete understanding of that before going forward.
I'd like to see it drawn to scale on the plot. The dimensions of the building and the height of the building.
So that is to scale on that drawing right there. The one on the left. Which one? Actually, all three of
The
them.
lower right corner?
All three of them are to scale. That's the lot.
The dimensions. I'd like to see the dimensions and the height. Completed with both phases.
I think something for the commissioners to take into consideration as well is that we're looking at the landscape of what we want this center of town to look like, much like when we were discussing the storage units, which the vote was public of how we decided on that, and we did not approve it. We're looking at changing the landscape of this area, and then when we're talking about pass-throughs from residential right across the sidewalk to public library and city hall, where we have a lot of families, individuals in and out, and then crossing over, we're looking at, eventually the plan to have a crossway through over to the Food Lion / the coffee shop area, correct? So looking at how this changes the landscape and whether it's the right place for this. I mean, there is a place for this. I think it's valid to have an option in this area, but we're looking at a very residential area by nature and a very residential family-focused area. And the families aren't going to walk from the library. It's not like they're going to walk through this area and it's going to be like going into a convenience store or an entertainment venue that's just like, oh, let's pop over on our way to Food Lion. So I think it's something to look at site planning-wise, what it adds to our footprint over here and which direction we want to look at.
Additionally, another concern that I would have would be with this outdoor range, but it's underground, but it's outside of the building, in which, we have blocks and we have the air and it's inside, and you've explained that very well, and I appreciate that. But what type of noise will come with such an area if it built up a little bit with fill dirt, or however that's going to look, to get a better understanding? We have some decibel readings here, but as compared to this, and that would be helpful for me to understand.
So what I'm getting from everybody is probably we're all pretty much on the same page. We want to take a vote to table it, bring it back, it'll be brought back in December.
The December 2nd meeting.
December 2nd, 1st of December. No meeting in November.
I make a motion that we table this until the December meeting.
Have a second?
I second it.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take the vote.
Commissioner Hirsch?
Aye.
Commissioner Geisler?
Aye.
Commissioner Saylor?
Aye.
Commissioner Grievel?
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager?
Aye.
Vice Chairman Shaw?
Aye.
Chairman Schreiber?
Aye.
Motion is tabled until December 2nd.
And we did not close the public hearing, so that means that at the meeting, December 2nd meeting, we will still have a public hearing. So you'll be able to come back and speak on it regarding, clarifications and so forth. So we hope this will work in your favor. So that we want to be fair to all parties. You're the applicant and as well as the surrounding areas. We want to do the right thing. So sometimes it is better to err on the side of caution. and take our time a little bit. Hope you appreciate that. All right, so we're going to move on to the next thing on our agenda because we still have 3 items for public hearing, and one of them, number 3, is the next. Amendments to Appendix A, zoning of the City of Poquoson Code of Ordinances.
Thank you, Mr. Chairwoman. I actually have a little PowerPoint that I'd like to kind of go over.
Okay.
You'll remember I talked to some of you last month about basically the long path that we've been on to get this thing ready. But I did want to just go over a few things that I did insert from last month. One is accessory buildings. It's something that we had talked about a long time, but I frankly omitted to put it in last month. This actually opens things up a little bit. You'll remember, some of you will remember that we did an amendment about 3 or 4 years ago for corner lots where you don't have a rear lot. So obviously you have to put the accessory building in the side yard. But we added the following language: on all other lots, accessory buildings may be located in the side yard only when there is not adequate area in the rear yard outside of the resource protection area. Okay, so, and that's on other lots, not just corner lots. If there is not adequate area for an accessory building in the side yard outside of a resource protection area, the structure may be permitted in the front yard, subject to following regulations. And A, I think, is really an important one here. The building shall not be placed within the front building setback line of the principal structure. Basically, what I'm trying to say there, or what we're trying to say there, is that you have a 35-foot setback, let's say from the road right away. The house may be set back 70 feet. So in other words, there's 35 feet of play in there from the actual minimum setback. So that would be an example where we might, if all the other conditions are met, we would allow an accessory building in the front yard. The reason this came up is we've actually run into this with BZA hearings in the past. And, good zoning dictates that where you're giving variances, you really need to look at changing the code. So that's what we're doing here. The building should not be located within a public or private easement, obviously. The building should conform otherwise to setback requirements of accessory buildings and private garages as found in section 123 of the zoning ordinance. And for a structure less than 13 feet in height, that's 7.5 feet. If it's greater than 13 feet, it's 15 feet. So that was one change. The other change was very much like it. Swimming pools located in the backyard only. Swimming pools may be located in the side yard only when there is not adequate area in the rear yard outside of the RPA, Resource Protection Area, with the following regulations. Swimming pools shall not be located within public or private easement. Above ground swimming pools not connected to the principal dwelling by deck shall be set back 7.5 feet from the property line and 10 feet from the principal structure. Basically, fire code gets involved there. In-ground swimming pools not connected to the principal building by a deck or patio shall be set back 7.5 feet from the property line. In-ground swimming pools may be set back 5 feet from the principal structure if the building official is provided with a letter from a certified engineer indicating the placement will not compromise structural integrity of the principal structure. Swimming pools located inside yards shall be completely screened from a private or public right-of-way by a fence. Under no circumstance shall a swimming pool be located beyond the front line of the principal building. So, no swimming pools in the front, in front of that front line. I just wanted to go over this again because I said last month that I would doctor it a little bit so that it would make sense. We've got 3 districts here that are essentially along our Victory Boulevard entrance corridor. In Village Commercial, we're talking about 75-foot front, 25-foot buffer, and there's no parking allowed. As you probably heard from Thomas on another case tonight, there's no parking allowed in the front yard. In general commercial, and remember in general commercial, we really tried hard to incorporate the city council's resolution from 2017. It's a little more complicated in general commercial and R&D because we have a HRSD easement, Hampton Road Sanitation District easement. So the setback is 75 feet from the property line or 25 feet from the HRSD easement, whichever is greater. Buffer is 25 foot from the property line or HRSD as applicable. Parking 45 feet from the property line or 25 feet from the Hampton Road Sanitation District easement, whichever is greater. R&D, it's a little bit different because you have a 50-foot buffer. So we have to make sure that we allow enough space for that 50-foot buffer. So the setback there is 75 feet from the property line or 50 feet from the Hampton Road Sanitation District easement, whichever is greater. Buffer 50 feet from the property line or HRSD easement, same thing. Parking 45 feet from the property line or 25 feet from the HRSD easement, that should read 50. That is a mistake on my part because remember we have a 50-foot buffer and not a 25-foot buffer. Okay. And again, in doing that, we've clarified that setbacks from Victory Boulevard are not confined to frontage but apply to all uses regardless of type of setback. This is to avoid a situation where you might have rear of residences protruding closer to 75 feet of the property line. Try to take in all the possible ways people would try to circumvent that. I'll take any questions you got. I do want to point out one thing before I open it to questions, though. You'll notice that the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area and the flood article are still in the zoning ordinance. I believe as history progresses, we will probably be moving the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area possibly to Chapter 34, which is where our stormwater management is, our erosion and sediment control. It's an environmental type ordinance. Floodplain, we have Chapter 42 in the code that addresses floodplain. If you look at what's in our zoning ordinance, it basically fades to Chapter 42. So there might in the future be some sense to moving that as well. If you look at the regulations, a lot of what we took out of the zoning ordinance is actually in Chapter 42 now. So anyway. All right, questions, comments? Hearing that, I guess I'll sit down for a minute.
I think you do. Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and open the public hearing on this item on our agenda. And if anyone has anything they would like to comment on this particular item, please come forward. As it appears there may not be anyone to speak at this time, we will go ahead and close this.
I'd like to ask a question just for clarity.
Okay.
On the chart that you showed us, Wally, the chart,
Yes.
Can you tell me what was and what is being revised, was prior to the revision?
Yes, I can. Let me go to the section, and I will do that. Let's see, in village commercial, which I'll tackle first,
Back to that slide for me.
I can.
That's in that one that's titled,
They were 75 feet in village commercial before. The only difference was we said with direct access off of Victory Boulevard, and now we're saying that abuts Victory Boulevard, which could be a difference. I mean, because there's very little stuff that's going to directly access off of Village, in Village Commercial off of Victory Boulevard. So we did make that change. And general commercial, let me look there, and I can tell you. Well, in R&D, it was 75 feet. Let me check what it was in general commercial. In general commercial, it was 45 feet.
Was what?
It was 45 feet.
And you've moved to 75?
We moved it up to 75. The main reason we did that was to have all three districts essentially behave the same way, because they're all in our they're all on our Victory Boulevard corridor, and uniformity of spacing is what we wanted going up and down that road.
This is general commercial R&D, DC that actually abut Victory Boulevard is what we're
Correct.
talking about. Only for Victory Boulevard.
Correct. I see you thinking. Is there any other questions that you have?
Just thinking what general commercial there is along Victory.
There's not a lot.
That fronts,
There's-
actually fronts Victory. I'm trying to think of any,
Well, there's the EDA assemblage
Yeah.
across the street.
right?
And then there's a little bit of general commercial going towards where the daycare center will be. But that itself is in B2. So you're right, there's not a whole lot of general commercial over there. And of course, most of the village commercials on our side of the road. And then you have research and development going towards out of town.
So EDA will be, would have to abide by this as well then?
They
For
will
their
have to
symbol
abide by it
parcels.
too. I will say this, there is a provision where environmental features would otherwise cause undue hardship. There is a method of going through the planning commission and city council to get that reduced.
As a variance, is that what it would be?
Well, it would not be a variance, it would be, it would act as a variance. It would not go to the BZA though, it would go to the planning commission and city council.
I guess I was just wondering, how that would affect the general commercial, being it's so small. EDA assembled some parcels, and it would seem to me 75 feet is probably that's a good distance from the property line.
Well, it's 25 yards, so.
Yeah. Well, whatever it
Yeah.
is, it's still 30 feet more than what it was. So I'm just
Right.
wondering how if EDA, do they have an out around it where the general public wouldn't, or is everybody
Oh,
playing
no,
with the
no,
same
no,
rule?
no, no. We would treat everybody the same. Everybody would have the same out, as you call it. We're not giving any different requirements from the EDA than we would give to anybody else.
And R&D was originally 75 feet, is that what you said?
R&D was 75 feet.
other than, you know, general
Well-
commercial is so different from BC and R&D. It just,
Well,
It makes
one
me
of the
wonder why
things
we're
we're
doing
trying
this.
to do is, I think we're all aware of what some of the problems are when we don't require what the ordinance, buffers that are sufficient width to really screen your view from Victory Boulevard. I certainly don't want to call out particular developments, but I think we have seen what happens when you do that.
that was even lessened, I think, on a next subsequent meeting even.
Yeah, that was,
You see what you got.
right.
Yeah, I was just curious as to why.
We're trying to learn from the past.
Have the parking limits changed, or are they the same? The parking,
Parking's never been allowed in that front area, so we didn't really change that.
these line items right here, the three on the bottom, are they the same, or have they been revised from what we had previously?
Well, the only thing that's been changed is from the HRSD easement, because beforehand, the Hampton Road Sanitation District easement was not even considered. I mean, obviously, you're not going to park in there. So,
Thank you.
You mentioned did you say a new daycare? A daycare?
well, there's going to be the higher ground daycare on the corner.
On the corner?
Yes.
The school, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's going to take up that corner.
Yeah, I should call it a school, because that's why they had to go through the whole process to begin with. But yes. Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. I see Thomas over there thinking. Anything you?
Okay, if not,
Make a motion to accept the amendments as written.
take the vote on that. As it is written.
All right, Commissioner Hirsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Geisinger,
Aye.
Commissioner Saleh,
Aye.
Commissioner Griebel,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Shaw,
Aye.
Chairman Schreiber.
Aye.
The recommendation passes.
All right. We'll move on to the next item on the public hearing agenda, which is amendments to Appendix D signs of the City of Poquoson Code of Ordinances.
Correct. You've got that in your resolution. Basically, this is a companion piece, can be thought of a companion piece anyway to the zoning ordinance revision. If you'll remember, we took all of the sign language out of the zoning ordinance and we put it in Appendix D. This is part of a long-standing process since I've been here to sort of gradually get signs out of appearing in multiple places. So this will deal with personal property signs. Of course, we have another part of the Chapter 6 that deals with signs in the right-of-way. The only other change I made in here was to add murals to our sign ordinance as a definition. A mural it's a work of art. It doesn't call attention particularly to any product being sold on the premise. And it can't otherwise be classified as a sign. One of the main things about a sign is that it does call attention to a product being sold. Now, you may you may get a mural on the side of the building that has a Coke sitting on a bench. That's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about something that is really aimed towards selling a product.
Well, I do have a question as I was reading through it earlier. I have no idea what page it is. Section 4, prohibited signs.
Okay.
Oh. So basically, this is talking about the temporary signs, like the real estate signs around town about events coming up, elections. So if I'm reading this correctly, every sign we've seen up in the city of Poquoson before the beginning of October has been in violation. So all the campaign signs that started in July, August, do they not have to abide by this?
Remember that Appendix D deals with signs on personal property, which political signs are exempt, by the way. But the signs that you see are typically in the right-of-way, and that's governed under Chapter 6. And what Chapter 6 says is that you can have a sign for a specific period of time, and we've gone out of our way to say that political signs meet that definition as well. So as long as they're not, I mean, there are size requirements, obviously, and there are intersections that you can't put signs in, like, With Creek Road, Yorktown Road, Municipal Drive, I believe we added last time, and, a number of those intersections, City Hall being another. But those are regulated as signs in a row.
The distance requirements, I'm sorry, from
There are, from the intersections, 200 feet.
both ways, right?
Yes.
And they cannot be, is that correct? Or they can be?
Well, they can be in the right of way. They can be in the right of way, but if you at one of those prohibited intersections, they can be in the right of way, but it has to be 200 feet away.
Did you say the length, the footage?
200 feet. 200 linear feet.
This section of the code, I think we're talking about two different things. But what we're trying to address here are business signs per se. We don't permit off-site, like number one, you see all off-site signs are hereby prohibited. That means the business at, say, 500 With Creek Road can't put a sign 2 miles away on someone else's private property. Okay, that means you can't advertise off-site. That's what we're talking about there. And then B, any sign erected on public land other than those erected in really conformity with Chapter 6 of the code, the signs you see out there are prohibited. So it's two different parts of the code. Right now, we're just talking about the signs prohibited under Appendix D.
Personal property signs, not right-of-way signs.
Yep. The right-of-way signs are a total different part of the code.
Okay, but personal property, but only in a business sense.
Kind of. Yeah, I
Different
mean,
subject.
A is an example of when it would be a business situation, meaning, all off-site signs are hereby prohibited. You have a business at 100 Poquoson Avenue, you can have your signs there, nowhere else. That's what that means.
Permission of the property owner? They can't
Yes.
be
That
there?
is correct.
Yeah.
It says unless, let's see, or in accord with the provisions of Chapter 6 of the city code. What is-
And
Right,
Chapter
and
6
that's going
is,
back to the right-of-way.
signs in the right-of-way.
I don't know. I think about that, people who have businesses that are trying to give some direction.
We have other provisions for contractor signs or signs while work is being performed.
Well, yeah, that's,
But, we wouldn't want a grocery store or a retail store to affix a permanent sign in someone's front yard in a residential district. That's what this is talking about.
this all came out of a conversation that we had with city council probably about 3 or 4 years ago, where we asked them what their vision was for signs that they were willing to allow in the right-of-way. Now, if you want my personal opinion, or even the opinion of some of the people I work for, one of whom's not in this room tonight, we'd like to see them banned from the right-of-way, period. But City council doesn't feel that way. We work at the pleasure of the council, so. I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm just saying that's,
Just for point of clarification, if there were to be something brought up about temporary real estate signs on city property and changes to that, that would fall under section 6 of the
That would
city
be
code?
chapter 6, signs in the right of
yeah,
way.
everything would be under chapter 6.
Chapter 6
If
city
it's
code.
on personal property, which is where you're normally going to find real estate signs, that's covered under Appendix D. But if it's in the right of way, correct, it'd be under chapter 6. Totally different part of the code.
That said, if there aren't any more comments, can we go ahead and get a motion to accept amendments to the Appendix D signs?
Make a motion, we accept them as written.
Have a second? Right, we're ready to take the roll on this one.
All right. Commissioner Hirsch,
Aye.
Commissioner Geisinger,
Aye.
Commissioner Seiler,
Aye.
Commissioner Griebel,
Aye.
Commissioner Yeager,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Shaw,
Aye.
Chairman Schreiber.
Aye.
The recommendation passes.
All right, thank you. And we'll now move on to the final public hearing item on our agenda, which is the adoption of Appendix E, short dash term rentals of the City of Poquoson Code of Ordinances.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is something that we have discussed at length with you all, I'll say now, the past couple years, and spoke a little bit about it last meeting, but I'll cover it in brief for the folks who may be listening at home. What you have before you is an Appendix E, what will be a new section of the city code that will govern how we regulate and permit and register short-term rentals, being Airbnbs or Verbos or anything offered for rent for 30 or less days. What you have before you, what was written with your guidance, new state code guidance, and guidance of city council, and it's before you in the posture that city council's requested it come to you, and that you have worked on to craft. The gist of it being, if approved by council in its current format, whole home rentals or rentals, it may be a boat that we discussed, but basically any rental for less than 30 days where a manager or lessee or operator is not present, it would require conditional use permit approval to operate as a short-term rental. But in situations where there would be an operator present, whether it be a lessee, a manager, or an owner, that process would be through our office, an administrative review and approval process. I'm happy to expand on what you read in your memo or anything that's been previously discussed, but that's what you have in front of you tonight.
Just to make sure I am on the same page, because we have talked about this quite a bit, with what we have in front of us, can you just remind me, is there anything that deviates from what came out? We were waiting for what the state has said. Are we in line with what the state of
Yes.
Virginia says our rules are to follow?
Yes, ma'am, we are. We are not. There's nothing in the code presented to you for consideration that's in conflict with state code. We mentioned the code section relevant and mentioned the very important as amended. As state code changes, we will change our requirements and regulations with it. But right now, it is in conformance with the state code. We're not doing anything that the state code told us we can't do. And it's really, to be very honest with you, in the same form that's been the subject of your conversations and the outcomes of those and the direction of city council. Sure.
If it's here, I just missed it, but it wasn't clear to me whether the owner case, so the case doesn't require a conditional use permit, do they still have to submit to the registry or no?
They do. All must be registered, but how we actually permit them to operate is the difference. So in those situations, where there is an owner present or a manager, a lessee, an operator, those folks would be permitted through our department and registered. The other situation where it's not occupied or it's a whole house rental, they would be registered the same but permitted by CUP only.
I'm fine with that, but I would wonder if it's clear in the provisions, because I couldn't find it. Maybe I could have just missed it, but.
Sure.
Not clear on that either. As an example,
Well, we say in B, permitted short-term rental shall be subject to the requirements of the City of Poquoson Short-Term Rental Registry as administered by the zoning administrator. The implication there being that once you are permitted, whether it be by CUP or by staff, you're subject to the requirements of the registry, which are, of course, first, get registered.
The time frame on that? Is that the registry file?
Sure. So we've asked, if you look at A in the front part of the new appendix, we say the first part of the new code basically says all existing short-term rentals shall have 90 days to submit the appropriate application to the Community Development Department from the date of the adoption of the ordinance. So we'll go 90 days from when council adopts the ordinance to allow for those currently operating to apply. And then if they don't apply, we would start a notice of violation process that you're operating a business basically without any permitting or business license from the city. And we will identify these or attempt at the very best through the sites available to identify the ones operating and let them know and give them that notification. It's a one-year renewal to register, but once you receive approval, unless for one of the listed reasons it's revoked, then you would just re-register every year. You wouldn't have to go back through the entire process.
so for instance, if there is a house in the city that's being offered as a short-term rental by a property owner they live outside the state, and it's being managed, maybe they're managing it themselves, how does that work as opposed to if there was, say, an ADU and the property owner lived in the main dwelling and there was an ADU in the back? How does, help me out here.
We have made it clear in this new code where we say we will require a conditional use permit for whole home - not owner occupied rentals or operator. Owner may or may not be the operator. That's the state code definition gives us that. But if the owner or an operator is not there, basically the person living there running the business, if you're not there, you're not going to live there, it's going to be available, the whole house, the whole space, then you have to get a CUP. If there is someone on site, an operator or the owner, a lessee, then we would have the authority to approve within our department. So that's your...
Otherwise, it requires a CUP.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if you rent a room out in your house,
If it's a room in your house and you live there,
you don't need a
that do not need a CUP.
or if it's attached to my house,
If it's attached,
I live there, that's the
right,
problem.
then we would consider it administratively. Otherwise, it would be permitted only by CUP.
Thomas, Section D under State Code Guidelines says localities may enact an ordinance that limits a lessee or sublessee to one short-term rental within the applicable locality. Does that mean one property?
Yes.
One room, one,
Yes. And
so
we've
somebody
included.
can't have 5 different
Right.
places throughout Poquoson and run
Correct.
them all as.
And we've included that in Section E of our new code. It says lessees or sublessees may act as operators of short-term rentals as provided in 15 Tech.2 Tech 983 of the Code of Virginia as amended. However, no individual may offer more than one property for short-term rental in the capacity of an operator as a lessee or sublessee. I do need to, editorial note there, I do need to insert, may act as operators of a short-term rental. So I will make that correction before it goes to city council.
Thomas, would individual also be a company or corporation that may have an idea of, hey, maybe I want to buy 3, 4, 5, 6, or make 6 of those residences short-term rentals? Does that apply to them?
It's tough. It's a great question. It's tough. The state code